Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're going to be having a look here at credit cards and see kind of just some general information about it as well as some specifics. So, what is a credit card? So, credit is something that everyone uses. So, every time you use the telephone or turn on a light or the air conditioning, you're using credit just as every time you use a credit card or take out a loan. Credit represents an agreement to receive goods, services, or money now and pay for them in the future. Only you can decide how to spend your money and whether you will use credit. These decisions should be based on your ability to repay credit debt, not just on what you want to buy now. So, as an example, most people tend to pay for things using, one of the ways they pay for things for a long time is through something called not cash and debit or interact. That means you're spending your own money on this. However, credit is where you're spending somebody else's money, but then you have to promise to pay it back. Okay, so most people have heard of the idea of something called a credit card, is something fairly common, and this lets you pay for things using somebody else's money. But then, of course, you have to pay that back. And so, to help you decide whether to use credit, we're going to consider the advantages and disadvantages of credit. And so, I have some here, and we'll go through this. So, some advantages of credit use: it's convenient. Using credit cards when you travel or shop is more convenient than carrying cash. It also provides a handy record of transactions. It's convenient to shop with a credit card because you know it's pretty easy to instead of using cash, you can just use your card to pay for things. You use other people's money. So during the time between you pay something with credit and when you pay the bill, you're using somebody else's money rather than your own cash. You can meet emergencies. So unexpected costs such as car repairs or health needs can be met quickly with credit. You can use something while you pay for it. So the thing is like again, if you want to buy like say a snowmobile or a car, it might be hard to buy that up front. So credit lets you buy it ahead of time and then get to use it while you're paying for it. It's you can get something you can't afford now. So if you can't afford to pay cash for a car or other large purchases, credit lets you get it. You can take advantage of sales. So if you need to buy something and it's on sale, you could buy it right now if you needed. And probably the most important point is buying something on credit with some creditors means you have a credit record. So buying with credit is a good idea, even if you can pay for it with cash because you get to build up this credit record. And so just as there's advantage of credit uses, there's also disadvantages. And so these are credit almost always costs money. You must decide if the item is worth the extra expensive interest paid, the rate of interest, and the possible fees. So, when we had a look at compound interest, that makes a return here. It can become a habit, encourages overspending. By simply having a credit card available, a person is likely to spend more when shopping than when paying cash for everything. And this makes sense. If anybody's ever been to like a mall, how easy is it to go store to store to store to buy stuff rather than taking cash out instead? Overuse of credit leads to a poor credit record. So it's not having too much, it's not using your credit card, it's not paying off your credit card is a problem. Comparison shopping may be discouraged. With credit available, people are more likely to buy the first thing that comes up rather than look for good deals. Reduces future buying power. Future income is tied up in credit payments. If you use credit, part of everything you earn in the future will go towards what you bought in the past. And there's extra fees added to the total cost. Credit card companies are collecting higher late and over the limit fees, which add to the total cost of credit. Pay attention to due dates and total amount charged to avoid these added costs. Okay. And so when you use a credit card, you have to pay quite a bit just to be able to use it, but you also pay a very high interest rate if you don't pay things back. So let's have a look. So what I have here is called a credit statement. This happens to be a math example, but any credit card company will give you something that looks similar to this. And so on here will be your say this is the Bank of Mel. So this is say it'll be your name and information, and it'll have some information. It'll have something called previous balance, charges, and credits, as well as a new balance. A previous balance is what was on the credit card before you started, like for the last cycle. Charges are new things that you have bought. Credits are things that you have paid back. and the new balance is what you owe. And if you notice, and you might have noticed this already, there's something called an interest rate. For credit cards, the interest rate is 24.9%. So keep in mind for investments typically run between 3 to 9%. Okay? But and this is where you make money. This is an interest rate of 24.9%. You might be thinking, is this real? Yes. Most credit cards have an interest rate between 19 to 26%. And there's actually ones that have much more. So if you have things like a department store credit card, those have much higher interest rates. Okay? There's something called a minimum payment. This is fairly insidious, but a minimum payment means, you know, if you owe $887, you only have to pay back a minimum of $25 at a time. There's a payment due date. So typically, when you buy something, you have about 30 days later to pay it back before interest starts applying. You have a credit limit, which is the most amount of money you can spend on a credit card, a new balance, which is the same as the new balance from up here, and how much available you have left on your credit card. And so here were some purchases that we made. On March 7th, we went to some eDepot and bought $458 worth of material. We made a payment on March 10th for $100, and we went to the furniture warehouse and spent $297 on this, on something else. So these were our new charges. And so some questions we can ask. How much did you purchase using the credit card during the month? So here, this would be your new charges. So it would be $755.48. And we could just put that as our answer. 755.48. How much did you pay towards the outstanding balance? Well, they paid $100. What is the credit limit? So the credit limit here, we could see this is the most amount of money you can have on your credit card. So it's $2,500. What is the minimum amount you are expected to pay? Well, that's just going to be the minimum payment, which is $25. How much is the current balance on the credit card? So the current balance here is this $887.69, because remember we had leftovers in the past plus new charges, and so what we have left over is $887 after we pay off 100. And I think this is 887.69. And if you decide not to pay off your credit card, what is the interest rate that is charged if you carry a balance? This will be 24.9%. So when you don't pay for something back on credit, you'll owe a portion of 24.9% on that item or whatever items that you may have from before. And so owing credit actually can, like I said, be quite, you can owe quite a bit of interest that way, which is not great. So there's something called a minimum pay. So what banks have is something called a minimum payment. Now, they actually quite would like if you were like from their perspective, if you pay back the minimum rate all the time. So why would they do this? Well, suppose you owe $2,000 on a credit card at 24.9% comp per year, compounded monthly, because credit cards are either monthly or daily, depending on which one you have. And let's get rid of the formatting here. There we go. We'll add our formatting back. Happens There we go. So suppose you owe this amount of money, okay? And you pay back $25 per month. How long do you think it will take to pay back the uh, initial amount? And so uh, a reasonable suspicion would be, hey, what if I just this $2,000 and I divide it by $25 a month? So that's going to be 80 months, right? And 80 months is about 6.5 years. So is it going to take me about 6.5 years to pay this off? No, it's actually much more. This will take about 18 years to pay off and will cost about, in this case, is about $5,500. Okay. And so if you were to pay back something like this, $25 a month, you would be paying this off for about 18 years. And you'll pay 5,000, like about 5,500 altogether. And you started with about 2,000 to begin with. So already that's not very good. And so this is the dangers of credit cards is that you never want to carry a balance on a credit card unless you have to. Okay? Typically credit cards are quite nice for things like, again, establishing a credit history we like to do, and emergencies. These are nice things to have credit cards for, but then otherwise you don't really want to be doing that. Okay? And so different banks will do different things. So here's the minimum payment that at all these other banks that you should be aware of exists. So CIBC, RBC, Desjardins, BMO, TD, and Scotia. So CIBC says the greater of 3% or $60. RBC is $10 plus interest and fees. Desjardins is 5%. BMO is $10 plus interest and fees. TD is the greater of 1% or 35. And Scotiabank was the greater of 3% or 25. The RBC and the BMO ones are the ones that you're going to pay the most amount of interest on. Because what it's saying is that, say for our $2,000 example, you will take your $2,000 divided by 10. So this is going to be 200 months, which is going to be about 16 and a half years. So 16.67. So that's 16 and a half years or so to pay this amount back. But you're paying interest every year on this, and you must pay that all back. So in the first year, it would be 2,000 times 0.249. And so you would have to pay back $10 plus $498 in just interest. In the second year, you paid off $10. So it'd be 1990 times 0.248, or sorry, 249. 0.249. And this is $495 plus $10. And you can see how very quickly you will end up paying, like in this case, this is going to be the equivalent of like $20,000 in interest on this purchase. So you have to be very, very careful about like your credit card use and just be aware that you don't want to be carrying this interest. So what happens when you owe money on a lot of credit cards? Well, approximately 20% of loans granted by consumer finance companies are for debt consolidation. With a debt consolidation loan, you exchange several smaller debts with various due dates and interest rates for a single large loan with one interest rate and one monthly payment. The monthly payment in this case is usually lower than the total amount of the monthly payments for the original debts. The interest rate may be lower than the rate you were paying on at least some of the original debts. But the time period for paying your debts with the consolidation loan is now longer. So the thing is, if you're in credit card problems, while a debt consolidation loan offers relief from debt payments in the short run, it extends the repayment further into the future. Research has shown that people who take out debt consolidation loans are more likely to add additional debts with their newfound financial relief, pushing them further into debt. And then I end off with some facts about credit cards. Your average Canadian owns two. There are 94.8 million credit cards in uh, in Canada. So keep in mind the population of Canada is 39.5 million. So this is including every man, woman, and child. Keep that in mind. 39% of Canadians say they will not use their credit cards at certain establishments. 56% of goods and services are paid by credit cards in Canada. So if you go buy something, more likely than not, it's being paid for with credit. 72% of Canadians have a credit card with a reward scheme. So usually you get things like cash back, or like you spend $100, get $3 back, or you might get something like rewards like air miles or something. Approximately 90% of Canadians 18 and over have a credit card. 29 million Canadians shopped online. And my least favorite fact is that $3,909 is the average amount owed on credit cards in Canada. So each of these 94.8 million credit cards owes on average $3,900. Yep. And the consumer debt in Canada was 2.4 trillion in the second quarter. And you're like, what do some of these things mean? Well, they're saying that credit card debt is equal to, and I'll use the approximately sign here, 94.8 million. So that's 94,800,000 multiplied by 3,909 is going to be equal to about, and again, I'm using the about sign just to make these calculations easier to work with, 0.4 trillion. So credit card debt in Canada is out of the, so Canadians in, so the, what Canadians owe, like individual people, 0.4 trillion amongst all of us is done in credit card debt, whereas 2 million is going to be in things like 2 trillion, 2 trillion are things like mortgages, consolidation loans, car loans, this kind of stuff. And so it's quite a bit. And you might be thinking, what is 0.4 trillion? Well, that's going to be this number here. So 0.4 trillion is the same thing as 400 billion. So there you go. And so I left some questions for you to try. There's not very many. I'll give you about 10 minutes or so to try this out. Use the credit card information shown below to answer the following. So I gave you two credit cards, this Mosaic MasterCard and this American Express Costco, to answer these things. What is the annual fee? Why do you think the annual fee varies from card to card? What is the minimum credit limit? What is the maximum credit limit? And what are the annual interest rates? So go ahead and try these out now, and then we'll see how you did. And so let's see how we did. Question one, what is the annual fee of each card? Each of the cards offered. So for the Mosaic here, it's an annual fee of $70. And for the Costco, this is going to be, we have a look. Oh, no annual fee. So this is no annual fee. So why? So this is probably the hardest question. Why do you think the annual fee varies from card to card? Basically, they just want to have different cards for different people. So if you don't use your credit card a lot, you don't really want to have an annual fee, or depending if you want to carry a balance, maybe you want to have a lower interest fee. So it depends on the lifestyle of credit card users. So it's a pretty general answer, but that's the reason why. Okay, what is the minimum credit limit of the Mosaic MasterCard? So if you have a look at the Mosaic MasterCard, the minimum credit limit is $500. What is the maximum credit limit of the American Express? Costco card, and the maximum thing is on here is $50,000. So quite a bit of money. And so just keep in mind if you owe interest on that, that's 50,000 times 0. What is this going to be? 81825. So that's $9,000 in interest if you use all of it. And what are the interest rates for each card? Okay, so we'll have a look at the Mosaic and the Costco. So for the Mosaic, the interest rate here is 22.5%. And for the Costco, that's going to be 18.25%. And so for as far as credit card questions are concerned, these are the kind of things that we look at.